you are less than. You must serve the men around you. Have you ever noticed that no matter how successful, independent, and self-aware you become, you still feel responsible for everyone else's emotions? Your mother's stress, your partner's reactions, your siblings' problems, and the peace in the room, what's happening within the family. And you are the one that remembers birthdays and the one who mediates conflicts, the one who fixes the crisis before anyone else even realizes there is one. And when you try to step back, then something inside of you feels deeply uncomfortable, and you feel that you may not be fulfilling the role that you're expected to fulfill, to be the glue in the family, almost like you're betraying someone or betraying who you are supposed to be. And let me tell you, if you grew up in a culture where Marianismo, more on that in a bit, and Machismo shaped family roles, then this invisible responsibility might not just be a personality trait at all. It may be a trauma-informed survival strategy. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why daughters often become the emotional managers of the family, how Marianismo and Machismo shape your nervous system and self-worth no matter where you come from or your culture, and why guilt shows up when you stop overfunctioning. And most importantly, how to begin releasing the invisible burden of emotional responsibility. Hi, I'm Karina Aybar, psychotherapist and coach, and I make videos about setting boundaries without feeling guilty, emotional regulation, parentification, and generational trauma recovery, so that you can understand why you feel the way you do and how you can change it with compassion and practical healing tools. You see, if this topic resonates with you, make sure that you check out my Parentification playlist. There you will find lots of insight where we go deeper into these patterns and how to unlearn them. Now, what is Marianismo, you may be thinking? Because you might have heard of Machismo. Most people talk about Machismo as simply male dominance. However, Machismo and Marianismo are two sides of the same system. You see, Machismo often teaches boys, you must be strong, you must provide, and you must not show vulnerability. Boys do not cry, boys belong to out in the street, providing, doing. But Marianismo teaches girls something equally powerful and often more invisible. It teaches daughters to be self-sacrificing, to be nurturing, to be patient, to endure quietly, to fix marriages, relationships, you name it, familial relationships, friendships. Otherwise, you're not doing a good job. You must take care of everyone. And the cultural reference comes from the image of Virgin Mary, with all due respect, La Virgen María, the ideal woman who is pure, selfless, and devoted to others. So now imagine a little girl growing up inside this expectation. She learns very early, good daughters anticipate needs. Good daughters keep the peace. Good daughters don't create problems. Good daughters create as little conflict as possible. They help their siblings. And when families are already dealing with stress, immigration challenges, financial pressure, addiction, or emotional immaturity, something else happens. The daughter doesn't just become helpful, she becomes essential to the family's emotional functioning, and even instrumentally. This is where we see the inequities between boys and girls. And this is where parentification often begins. Now, as I mentioned, this not only happens in the Latin community, but rather globally. I see this with many of my clients, and I see people from all walks of life many countries and many races and social economic status. In case you didn't know, parentification means when a child takes on adult emotional or practical responsibilities before they are developmentally ready. In many families shaped by Machismo and Marianismo, daughters become the emotional translator, the caretaker of younger siblings, the mediator between parents, and the emotional support, in most cases, for the mother. Sometimes it is subtle, and maybe your mother would tell you things like, "You're the only one who understands me and that I can count on. Unfortunately, you know how your brother is. Therefore, that feels validating and it perpetuates this dynamic." Your mother might tell you, "I don't know what I would do without you or if I didn't have you." And that sounds loving on the surface. And your mother may not intentionally want to burden you with this, but she probably was the product of this pattern. But a child's nervous system registers this as an invisible contract. Your role becomes, I must hold things together. And neurologically, that responsibility gets wired into the brain. So what happens in the brain and nervous system? When children grow up needing to monitor everyone else's emotional state, then the brain adapts. The amygdala, which detects emotional threat, becomes highly sensitive. And your brain learns to scan constantly, is mom upset? Is dad angry? Is there tension in the room? Are mom and dad fighting? Why is this person upset? Did I have anything to do with it? Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part that is in charge of decision making, has one central question. What do I need to do to keep things stable? And the nervous system adopts what we call a fawn response. Instead of fight or flight, the child learns appease, fix, soften yourself, anticipate needs. And over time, your body begins to equate caretaking with safety and love. So when you stop caretaking, and your nervous system experiences anxiety, dread, or guilt. This is very common with many of my clients and members. And it is not because you are doing something wrong, but rather because your brain learned that your role in this family and in this world is to keep the family functioning, to keep relationships going. So you self-sacrifice. Now, why does guilt show up when you stop fixing? This is one of the most confusing experiences for adult daughters of dysfunctional families who have been trained to self-sacrifice. You intellectually understand that you shouldn't be responsible for everyone. But when you set a boundary, something inside of you says, this feels wrong. I'm acting selfishly. And that internal conflict is the clash between your adult awareness and your childhood loyalty programming. Cognitively, your brain may still carry beliefs like, if I don't help, something bad will happen or they will abandon me. If I say no, I'm being selfish. How can I be enjoying myself when my family member is struggling? Or if I stop fixing things, I'm abandoning my family. I'm abandoning my partner. And these beliefs were reinforced for years through family roles, through cultural expectations and survival patterns. I remember growing up where my grandmother, may she rest in peace, a lovely lady, but evidently had experienced her own internalized oppression. As many of us who are even in this gender equity and advocacy movement experience. I remember growing up at a very young age identifying, why is it that we get up for the male in my family to eat and they get their food warmed up. Meanwhile, we are serving food. They get the better pieces of meat. You see, very minute, everyday behaviors and rituals that signal to a daughter, to a little girl, you are less than. You must serve the men around you. And don't get me wrong, okay? I respect men and I am here to promote gender equity. However, we have to call things the way they are. There is a lot of inequality in our households culturally, and not just I identify as a Latina woman, as a citizen of the world, born and raised in the Dominican Republic. And I serve so many women from so many races and ethnic backgrounds who struggle with the same dynamics. And it could look differently. It may not be instrumentally where they are cleaning more than their siblings or the males in the family, but they have higher expectations that are imposed on them to perform, to caretake, and even though they can overcompensate, become highly educated women, as many of my clients and members are, they still struggle with a sense of low self-worth and being chosen and being expected to perform and to produce more than their male counterparts, than their partners. Even in our own families, we are expected to serve for our partners without placing the same responsibilities onto our male counterparts. That is just the reality. Let me know in the comments if you can resonate with what I'm sharing, and if you feel comfortable enough, please share below your own experiences. So let's explore how this shows up in relationships, right? Parentification and all of these gender roles show up unconsciously. You may notice patterns like becoming the emotional coach in relationships and attracting partners who need fixing. And you feel responsible for other people's moods and being the friend that everyone vents to. But when you finally ask for support, then relationships suddenly feel unbalanced. They do not feel reciprocal, and people do not have the capacity to support you, and you may struggle as well with asking and receiving support. And this can create a deep sense of loneliness because your identity has been built around being the strong one and the one that has it all together. So it can also be very hard for others to identify how to support you. I want to give you a very common example within my practice. So let me give you this example of a client who I will not disclose their name, but let's name her Sophia. Sophia grew up translating for her parents and helping raise her siblings and comforting her mother when her parents argued. Now she is in her 30s and her brother calls whenever he has financial problems and whenever there is an issue, right? Her mother vents to Sophia about family conflicts and how to handle these situations, and all of a sudden she's put in this position where there is triangulation and Sophia is mediating between the mother and her brother, right? Then her partner expects Sophia to also be ready to support him, to be sensual, sexy, to keep the house clean, even though she's a highly educated and professional woman. The partner would like her to be more in tune with her femininity and be ready. But meanwhile, Sophia is exhausted. Why? Because she's been carrying such a heavy load, and her partner is very well-intentioned. He does assist around the house, but sometimes gets frustrated because at times, or quite often, Sophia feels overwhelmed and burnt out. So does this resonate? Every time that she tries to say, look, I cannot help with this right now, she feels overwhelmingly guilty. She feels so selfish and guilty when she says no to her partner. She tries her best, and when she says no to her mother. But because her nervous system still believes, I must fix this. If I don't hold things together, everything will fall apart and relationships will collapse if I don't do it. You see, once you navigate the world with this belief, you are going to be exhausted and think that it is your responsibility to fix everything and everyone around you. Now, another perspective I want to offer you is the somatic emotional labor. One thing many people don't realize is that emotional responsibility isn't just psychological, it is somatic. You can literally feel in the body. And many parentified daughters carry tension in their head, they get migraines in their shoulders, they get stomach problems in their chest. There is a shift in your body, but you struggle with identifying that. You take a pill to just minimize the pain because you're so used to it and you have such a high tolerance for pain and discomfort. So your breathing becomes shallow and your nervous system is in low-grade hypervigilance at all times, always anticipating the next emotional need. So this is why intellectual insight alone often is not enough. This work and unlearning these patterns require a very intentional and compassionate approach to being, guess what? Unproductive. The body also needs to experience release and safety, not just hyperfunctioning. Now, that being said, let's talk about how to begin rewiring the script, because breaking this pattern doesn't mean rejecting your culture or family or becoming angry. It means evolving the role you are giving. And here are 3 places to begin. Number 1, identify invisible responsibilities. Ask yourself, what problems do I feel responsible for that are not actually mine? And write them down. I am sure there are patterns in relationships that you notice that you tend to step it up when you don't have to and get involved. Many people discover that they are carrying things like family conflicts, mediation, emotional regulation for parents, financial or logistical support beyond your capacity. And don't get me wrong, it is so important to be a supportive person and to help support your family if you have the means, but not to your detriment. Awareness is the first step so that we can balance the roles. Number 2, let's reframe guilt as a nervous system signal. Instead of interpreting guilt as proof that you are doing something wrong, try seeing it as a nervous system alarm adjusting to a new role. Your brain is learning. Affirm to yourself, I can care about people without carrying their emotional world. And that is a huge shift. Number 3, practice somatic release. Here's a simple exercise that you can try. Take a slow breath. And imagine all the responsibilities that you've been carrying, just shifting off of your shoulder. And visualize placing them down next to you and not abandoning them. Just acknowledge them and tell yourself, these are not mine to carry alone. So begin visualizing how you can compartmentalize. Is this for my mother? Is this for my father? Is this for my siblings? My partner to carry? You see, your nervous system needs moments like this to experience a different relationship to responsibility. Now let's talk about breaking the cycle for the next generation. Because one of the most powerful parts of healing this pattern is what happens next. Whether you decide to have children or you have them already or not, you can lead by example within your family. When daughters begin releasing the emotional burden of overfunctioning, they create space for something new. More honest relationships, more reciprocal partnerships, healthy, not toxic relationships, healthier family dynamics, and deepening of relationships. And if you have children or younger relatives watching you, they learn something powerful too. That love does not require self-sacrifice and erasure. That caregiving and responsibility can be shared. And that emotional maturity belongs to everyone, not just the daughters, but everyone in your family and in general. So if you grew up carrying responsibilities far beyond your age, the fact that you still care deeply about others is not a weakness. It's a beautiful trait, a beautiful personality trait, and it is evidence of your capacity for empathy and resilience. But empathy does not require self-sacrifice as your identity. Healing means learning that you can still be loving without being responsible for everyone. Now, if this resonated with you, I invite you to stay with me here and watch my Parentification playlist. It is packed with more insight and practical tools. We explore these patterns and how to unlearn them every week, so make sure that you are subscribed and check out a new video every Monday. I would love to hear from you in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. And please remember your resilience.